The mask. The winter wind that year was like a knife dipped in ice water, cutting into the skin with every gust. Fourth grader Kenta Sato hunched his shoulders, buried half his face into his scarf, and quickened his pace toward home. The sky was a dull gray. Though it was only 4 in the afternoon, the day already had the heaviness of dusk. Because he had cleaning duty after class, the familiar streets were now strangely empty. When he turned into the narrow alley that led directly home, his steps slowed involuntarily. There was someone at the entrance. A tall woman stood there, dressed in an off-white trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat. Her outfit was neat, even stylish, but in this freezing dusk, she wore a large white mask that covered most of her face, revealing only a pair of eyes. Eyes that were too dark, too still. She stared blankly at the wall in front of her, motionless, like a forgotten mannequin left on a street corner. Kenta felt a chill crawl up his spine. He wanted to take a detour, but that would mean an extra 20 minutes on the main road. He lowered his head, pretending not to notice, and decided to hurry past her. Just as he walked by, a voice drifted to his ear, cold, flat, almost mechanical. "Little boy." Kenta froze. His feet stopped mid-step. He didn't dare to turn around. "Am I beautiful?" The voice came again, closer this time. So close it felt like it brushed the back of his head. Kenta's heart hammered wildly in his chest. He suddenly remembered the rumor spreading through school, the one about a tall woman wearing a mask who stopped children walking home late and asked the same question. The Slit-Mouthed Woman. He had always thought it was an urban myth to scare kids. He never imagined he would meet her in real life. "Am I beautiful?" Her tone carried a faint irritation and a strange metallic rasp, like 2 blades scraping together. Terror flooded him. He wanted to cry. He bit his lip hard, remembering the rule from the rumor. Don't say beautiful. Don't say ugly. Either answer would lead to death. Say nothing. Just run. He tried to move, but an icy hand clamped around his wrist like an iron shackle. The strength was shocking, nothing like a woman's grip. She forced him to turn around. Those eyes above the mask were bottomless, black pits without a single glint of light, eyes that didn't belong to anything human. "Answer me," she ordered. Her mask shifted slightly as she spoke. Kenta trembled all over. Tears welled up and spilled down his cheeks. With a sob, he screamed the only answer he could remember, the one his seniors said might save him. A. Average. According to the legend, if you said average, she would hesitate and cover her face again, giving you a chance to escape. The grip on his wrist loosened slightly. Her expression flickered, confusion, amusement. Then she laughed. A low, guttural sound, like gravel grinding in her throat. Average. Hee. Average. She released his wrists. Kenta's heart leapt. He turned, ready to run. But she slowly raised her hand toward her own face. Her movements were deliberate, ritualistic, suffocatingly slow. "Then, let me show you clearly." The mask began to slide down. Kenta stopped breathing. His eyes widened until they hurt. Beneath the mask wasn't blood, it was worse. The lower half of her face was unnaturally smooth and pale, like wax. But from the corners of her mouth to deep gashes stretched upward toward her ears, as if her face had been torn open by brutal force. The edges were dark red, raw, and curling outward, exposing yellowed teeth and parts of her gums. There were no lips, only a hideous, gaping wound. That was not a human face. Now, the torn mouth moved, producing a wet, distorted voice that reeked of decay. "Am I beautiful now?" Kenta's mind went blank. Every trick, every legend, every rule evaporated. The horror consumed him entirely. He gasped once, sharply, and then the world went black. He opened his eyes. He was lying in his own bed. Warm blankets wrapped around him. His mother sat beside him, eyes red from crying. His father stood nearby with a police officer. "He's awake." Kenta's awake. His mother sobbed with relief. The officer explained that a passing mailman had found Kenta unconscious in the alley. He was unharmed, only terrified. They questioned him, but decided he must have been frightened by a strange passerby. The incident was filed and forgotten. Kenta recovered physically after a few days, but the image of that woman's slit mouth was burned deep into his mind, haunting every dream. He refused to walk that alley again. He refused to go out at dusk. Life eventually returned to normal. The adults moved on, until one quiet weekend afternoon, about a month later. The sun was warm that day. Kenta sat in the living room watching TV while his mother cooked dinner in the kitchen. Sunlight spilled across the floor, soft and golden. "Kenta," his mother called. "Can you go to the convenience store and buy some soy sauce? It's just at the corner." He hesitated, but the bright afternoon reassured him. He put on his jacket, grabbed some coins, and went out. The store was closed. He bought the soy sauce and headed home, walking briskly. As he stepped out of the shop, something across the street caught his eye. A woman, tall, off-white trench coat, wide-brimmed hat, and the same large white mask. She stood quietly on the sidewalk, watching the traffic. But Kenta knew she was watching him. His blood turned to ice. He spun around, ready to run. The woman moved, not quickly, just slowly, gracefully, raising her arm to point across the street. Her finger aimed directly at his apartment building. Then it rose, slowly, to the third floor. His family's living room window. Kenta followed her gaze and froze. Behind the half-open curtain of that window stood a shadowy figure. It was watching the street below, and it was wearing an off-white trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat, just like the woman across the street. No, impossible. He whipped his head back toward the sidewalk. The masked woman was now facing him directly. Under the brim of her hat, those black eyes locked onto his. They pierced the noise, the traffic, the sunlight. Fixing on him alone, she raised her hand again, pointing straight at Kenta. Then the other hand slowly lifted toward her mask. The movement was identical to that night in the alley. No, Kenta whispered. The soy sauce bottle slipped from his grasp, shattering on the ground. Dark liquid splattered across his shoes. She pulled the mask down, just enough. The slit, that monstrous wound stretching to her ears, was perfectly visible in the sunlight, and she smiled. But she wasn't alone. Kenta's eyes darted around, and his world fell apart. At the bus stop in the distance, at the bookstore on the corner, even in the reflection of the convenience store's window behind him, there were others. Tall women, off-white coats, wide-brimmed hats, white masks, all standing still, all facing him, all watching, silent, everywhere. Kenta couldn't move. Terror hollowed him out from the inside. Even home, the safest place in the world, was no longer his, because in that bright window, behind the curtain, another she was waiting. Where could he go? Where could he hide? The cold spread from his feet to his scalp. He looked at the woman across the street, at the slit-mouthed smile stretching wide and wider. This time, he didn't even faint. He understood, in that final, frozen moment, he had been marked forever.